Good evening and welcome to Edessa, the Dark Crusade. Tonight we start in Madeline's Haven, where a busy Torvald is just returning to the Haven with news, perhaps even a thing they need to do. Who knows? But Madeline herself is just doing her normal things, preparing certain things, writing up things, studying maps of the city and the district, among other things. But we will start as Torvald enters.
Torvald comes in fairly more confidently than he has before. He's fed. And he clutches a piece of roll of paper in his hand as he comes into the Madeline's study.
She shoots him a quick glance and just says, "Your meeting went well?"
Torvald nods. Yes, I have my writ of passage.
That will make things a lot easier.
For a price, but a price I'm willing
That's just the way of things.
Our sheriff, Sir Gerard, wishes to see you. He asked me to bid you that message.
Do you know if he's still in his... where you saw him?
He was at work in his office in the palace when we met.
This would be most fortuitous if I could see him tonight. She gets up, and you see that she goes over to the place where she has some stuff. If you're going out for, well, she just looks at it, decides against it, and she just, you can see that she's looking at her armor, actually. She just gives it a quick glance, just thinks on it for a couple of seconds, and she says, "Well, I believe we should be going. Come."
He hesitates a minute, but he doesn't question her. He just nods and follows.
I suppose it is only normal to be a little hesitant once a sheriff wants to see oneself. Oh, well,
I haven't forgotten what he did.
please.
But he is a sheriff.
I know. He is a sheriff. And he is resourceful. She smiles to him, takes a moment. She seems to remember something. And then, then she will begin to head out. The two of them will, the writ will only be for Torvald, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Madeline is going to be
It's
sneaky.
stealthy thing.
Yeah, I've rolled for it before. I can roll for it again. I had 4 successes on the stealth roll, so now I will obviously have 2.
Yeah.
She is stealthy. Being stealthy. And it will obviously take a little bit longer, but they will make their way to the palace. And there will probably be a little bit of time waiting for the right guardsman to come and see them in. Madeline will let the process take its time. But they will be let in, unless there is, of course, something that the sheriff has demanded at the gate that will complicate this.
Nope.
All right. But then the sheriff will get a visit.
So the door is already open. And it's much like when Torvald left. The papers seem to hang on just a sec.
Thord, for his part, is standing back at this time. He seems to have reverted to the role of bodyguard.
Hmm.
Or he likes the view of Madeline from behind. Who knows?
An argument could be made for both.
Apologies. Anyway, it's much like when he left. There's papers have been scattered around differently, maybe, but he will look up when the two presumably enter.
Good evening, my sheriff.
Yeah, like I said, Thorvald holds back. He's reverted to what you're used to with him when he stands with Madeline as sort of a bodyguard position. But he does bow again when he sees the sheriff.
Sister Madeline, welcome.
Your duties keep you busy, I am sure. It is good for you to have the time to receive me, if not for the whole night, of course. Just for a moment, I do believe we have, if not one and more than one thing to discuss.
Only one, as far as I know.
Very well. Madeline will go over and sit down.
Gerard sort of like clasps his hands behind his back and kind of wanders to the side a little bit and looks at the ornate sword that's been placed there that Memnon made and ponders on it for a moment before glancing back over to Madeline. He says, "The prince is very much interested in figuring out all the details of the creature that we faced some time ago. If I'm being honest, you would have to be a daft person indeed not to see that there is some sort of connection between you and it. However, be that as it may, I'm not particularly interested in such things, considering all that is going on around us. Would you not say that that is prudent?"
I would. Also considering that I was the one to kill the beast.
Right.
Whatever connection there was between me and it is, perhaps I would say, mute. I have experienced many weird things.
Indeed.
But, yes, the abyss seemed to have a definite connection to it. My clan must have been involved somehow.
I
That
don't
would be a
presume.
fair assessment.
I don't presume to know much of anything surrounding it or about it.
Well,
Frankly,
as far as I know, no one has seen it since.
oh, I'm certain it is quite dead. So, the prince is interested in figuring out what it's all about. I'm not. Supposing that there is a connection to you, supposing that perhaps the presence of a Tremere might have forced your hand, so to speak, supposing a whole plethora of conceivable possibilities. Considering all these things, I'm going to call it a professional courtesy between you and I that I'm simply going to allow this matter to dissipate entirely. And we will say that perhaps if such things are the purview of your clan or directly related to you, that perhaps you keep tighter guard next time and not allow it to reach the city. If, and supposing if, you are involved. You might not be. It could just be idle speculation.
Me and my clan will be at the utmost peak of vigilance to assume and assure that such a thing will never happen again if indeed we were or had any relation to it. I am not certain yet, since I do not know every doing of every member of my clan within this city.
Of course. And it's very possible that you have no clue of anything about it.
Madeline is smirking.
Again,
Just nods.
we will consider it a professional courtesy that we will sweep this under the rug, and I will tell the prince that nothing has come about.
Well, if you would accept it, I would extend a professional courtesy to you.
Gerard tilts his head.
We have a problem that some would say was perhaps related to this creature.
Hang on a sec.
Thorvald steps a little bit more into the room. He's not quite. I'd say he's probably about 4 paces from the back of Madeline's chair, so he's not really encroaching on her space. But she will be aware that he is sort of present. He says nothing. But there's kind of a palpable presence to him being there, and it makes the room a little heavier, I suppose. Whether it's his countenance or his mood. Hard to tell.
Well, Torvald is like he has like 1 or 2 on the Emily scale in regard to social, well, presence. It's a little awkward, but he's a lot more presentable.
Posing than anything else. He physically over-dominates a room, which to some is very uncomfortable and impolite. But he keeps his distance from the sheriff. He seems wary of him. But it seems that Madeline, knowing Thorwald's body language, knows that he took a few steps closer to reassure her.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
We still, even with the disappearance of Joanna, who was an infernalist, we still have them in the city. And they are planning something quite grand. We need to stop it. And I wish to assist. I do believe that I can help. But this is, of course, assuming that I am not a suspected part in this. If I am, that is, well, a little strange, but I can understand what certain things will look like to certain people.
Oh, come now. You can't be expected to be responsible for all the devilry in the city.
This makes Thorwald smile.
No, I do believe that this particular brand of infernalism is quite unrelated to you. But perhaps you have some information about it.
I have suspicions. Not suspicions, that's not a word. Sorry. I have suspicions of certain people. One that I do not believe you have looked into. One we must be very careful approaching, if we ever choose to.
And who might that be?
Gufram Wessem of Clan Setait.
The neonate.
Yes.
Interesting.
I thought so.
And what would lead you to believe this?
Some time ago, there was a brand of curiosity. A few Canaanites looked into something. There was conflicting reports, so I and some others, sometime afterwards, investigated the place, investigated what happened. I cannot divulge all of the details, but we did find something associated with something definitely not of this world. Something that was different from anything I have ever seen. We know that there were 4 people present. I know 3 people that were present for certain. One was Omar Shadid, who I have investigated and found nothing on. His stories match what I found. One was Irene, was present, was knocked into torpor, I believe. It was apparently some sort of cave-in. Wow. There's something about that cave-in that doesn't sound too right to you. Just, well, unless of course you fail as well. You can roll a P&E if you want. But I actually fail.
Ha. Gerard, roll a peony.
You never know. I failed. So
Okay. You got me.
you're gonna
All
try.
right.
Do it.
We're in 1.
Yeah.
Nope.
Wow. I gotta respect you for having 2 dice to that. That's awesome. Yeah, like Madeline seems a bit concerned about Irene when she says this, and she just like she's a neonate, and she was knocked into torpor, was pried out of there, but by Guthram, who was also present. But there are certain details that apparently only Guthram knows. And I have not been able to get those answers out of him. Did he find something down there? There is the potential that something was removed from that place. If so, did one of the people down there remove it? Or was it removed before they came? How much does he know of this?
That is certainly something that must be looked into then.
Indeed.
And if you don't take offense, I shall also look into Omar Shadid and Irene myself, just to be sure.
Oh, all within the purview of the investigation, of course, but sure. But a person like you must already have people investigating this, no?
Some here and there. It is an issue that affects all of us.
Indeed. And as I said, I would like to assist, if possible. I will not step over anyone's toes, of course. But if it is possible, I could join your investigation and perhaps assist. I have been dealing with these things before, and the prince of the city I am a member of the court of, well, he has had more experience fighting infernalists than anyone else I know.
If it comes to that, I shall seek out that avenue. I thank you for your information, and if there is a way that I can utilize you in this investigation, rest assured I will. As well, if you learn anything related, I'm sure that you'll let me know.
Of course I will. The grand scheme of exactly what has happened is unknown to me. But this has many portents and, well, yeah, I'm gonna set that at difficulty like 7 or 8, but she does succeed. And she will go on and say, but I have tried to stop Johanna before, and I failed. I will not fail again. So, if at all possible, I will assist. I hope that you will find me useful.
Johanna was a oversight that all of us made. Margot has expressed her interest in dealing with a demon that has been haunting her as well. Perhaps all of these things will come together.
The demon I stirred. I hope it is not too late. I hope that we can save her. Or at least stop the demon's influence in this world. I really wish not to see that thing again.
Nor I. I've never seen a thing hit something so hard it flew out of a building.
No. This was a different thing. This one did not take anyone's body. It simply appeared by itself. Poor Omar Shadid. His shop was closed for 3 weeks due to, well, the hole in the roof. The major parts of the first floor was missing or burned completely to cinders. And the majority of the bottom floor was also destroyed, I believe.
I recall this incident. All of these are points on the pentagram, so to speak. They will all have to be dealt with in order to firmly say that we have removed the taint of infernalism from the city.
You do realize that as long as she is tied, there is still a presence. And if we cannot remove the binding between her and the demon, we might have to do some extraordinary things too. I am not saying one way or the other. I am simply stating that such things I have looked, but I have not found very much. In fact, I have found virtually nothing to in any way indicate the ways to break such a bond.
If there's anything that can be done, I trust that I have some extraordinary minds at my fingertips to be able to research this conundrum.
Of course you have.
Actually, I'm going to roll something.
In fact, you have me now. She smiles. Is it, just out of character, is it time for the M to the B?
Sure. um, Speaking of devils, there is a small knock at the door, where I would assume maybe
Door
one
is
of
actually probably open.
Oh, well then, for the sake of brevity, the Merchant of Bones just kind of shuffles in. No real announcement, no pomp and circumstance. He just kind of walks in.
And just to kind of like set it, like the door's open, but Gerard has made it so that this hallway probably is not at all like traversed by anybody. So you would be probably one of the few people that might get let through because you have business. Gerard
Yeah.
knows you. You're
Mhm.
distinctive.
Yeah, and you would probably hear like the tampers of his cane, shit like that. So, anyways, he comes in, and he kind of looks at the situation for a minute here, and just gives a small bow, um, before he comes deeper into the room, and he just says, "Good evening, all. I hope I'm not intruding. I'm making my rounds amongst the ranks of the Canaanites, and I just wanted to make sure that I saw at least you two." And he says, pointing to Gerard and Madeline.
Thor stands aside to allow the Merchant of Bones better access to see both. He's rather imposing on the centre of the room.
As a social courtesy. Sorry, go ahead.
And he bows respectively to him. He sort of stands aside to give him way.
Yeah, he looks to Thorvald and just kind of waves his hand dismissively. Just says, "Though I am here to see these two, I am even delighted to see you as well, Thorvald. Please, I do not need such uh, due courtesy. I am just merely a doctor."
A doctor is a man of respect. And who am I to block your visage of our two respected Canaanites? He smiles.
So, you are making your rounds as an apothecary or a social?
A little bit of social, a little bit of spreading the information around. Considering that we seem to have some of the same social circles, I just wanted to make sure that we are all aware of what we're kind of dealing with. And I understand that understand that there is murders going on within the guild halls.
Yes, I have
Yes.
heard those things. Obviously, the sheriff is the person to speak to.
Well then, I hope you don't mind that I exposit just a little bit, Sheriff.
In just a moment, we were discussing the infernalism within the city.
It deals with very much the same thing.
Well,
But
then,
I will wait.
if it is related, then by all means.
Well then, I've come to have a vision of a individual that was from the marketplace. He seemed to stay there. And he made his way into the house of the Toreador Primogen after she had left. And he did not peruse her around our house or seemed have any kind of interest in what she owned or what she might have had, but made way into her cellar. And in her cellar were these two individuals standing next to a binding circle. Around the outside of it had pagan runes, and it was all done with blood. On the inside were a pair of crashing waves coming in on each other, made of liquid silver. One, I believe, is the demon that, from what I understand from talking to the Primogen about this, was the one that you, Madeline, encountered in Omar Shadid's shop. This one,
We were just talking about that particular entity.
indeed. I don't know the particulars, but from what I've seen through this man's eyes, at least, is that this was a demon much taller than Gerard, elongated head, very sharp teeth, pair of horns, long serrated tail, hooved feet, and monstrous claws.
Madeline just nods.
But the interesting bit was another individual standing next to him. This was a man more of human likeness, very aged but spry nonetheless. He had plain clothes and had a multitude of scars across his body and protruding veins. He also had haunting, dull yellow eyes. This individual began talking to the man that I was looking through and told him that he was going to be rewarded by the Eternal Choir for the amount of discord that he has sown and for recruiting so many to the cause. He goes on to say that the aristocracy, which he also named the false kings, were going to be laid low, for they do not understand how to acquire power or keep it.
Well, that very much sounds like a threat.
Indeed. Now, it was after that that this man was laid himself out on the binding circle and was thus ravaged, though maybe not so ravaged as like an animal, wild animal would do per se, but more in a precise manner. It was holding back. It wanted to express itself much deeper than it could. So I'm assuming that it might have had to do with part of the ritual that was going on, but from what I understand, the at least the heart was extricated from the body.
The body being this individual you were witnessing the scene through.
That's what I'm assuming. It died before I can get any further. The vision ended because that's when this individual died. But coming into this late, I was pulled in by Aldrich the Wise and Irene and Eklios of Clan Zemitzi. At least from what I understand, the murders have been, at least those that have been murdered, at least were missing their hearts and major organs. Some of them, anyways. Though the funny thing about this eternal choir is that it really means nothing. What I believe it's referring to is this choir of redeeming, which is a rather new cult that seems to have come to prominence within Odessa, and they seem to have entrenched themselves within the nobility and other social circles. So that is what I wanted to convey to you two.
What do you know of this cult?
Unfortunately, that's all I know. I've tried to research any ways of identification, maybe how they dress, mannerisms, iconography, but I have come up short. I'm going to chalk it up to my lack of social graces. So I believe that is where someone like you, Gerard, or you, Madeline, might come into play.
Is the Primogen in danger then?
She has been in danger for quite a long time.
If these things are being carried out in her home, was she aware of this?
She seems to be very aware.
Thorvald
looks uncomfortable.
Madeline she doesn't stare at the sheriff, but she does look like very seriously for him for a couple of moments, just looks at him, since this is something they discussed not like 5 minutes ago. And she just nods a bit and she just says, well, Gerard can, of course, if he wants to. I'm sure that he has some eyes and ears in some noble circles. Perhaps the two of us could perhaps want to join this cult. If that is the case, we could go to a meeting.
Thorvald shoots a look at Madeline that's not exactly disguised.
It would seem that there are a great many pieces of information coming to light for the first time. I had been told that from Margot herself that there was a demon trapped in her basement. I was not made aware that there were rituals happening involving others. I simply was made to believe that there is a singular entity in there. Perhaps that this took place before she came to me with it. I should hope that it was not after. That would be awfully suspicious of the Primogen. Did not be aware of regular meetings in her place of residence.
She seemed to be very caught off guard by that as well. So I'm assuming that this was happening way before she even knew.
That means that what you saw, you do not know exactly when it transpired?
Unfortunately, I do not know.
Well,
I used certain abilities to perform this. I had to exhume the body in order to get what I was able to tell you this evening.
of course. It is simply important for us to have a good idea of what we do not know, and especially in regards to time or when what happened and so forth.
But from what information I gathered, I have told Aldrich, I have told Irene and Eklios, as they were there with me, as they had pulled me in for this because they knew of my abilities with dealing with the dead. And from what I understand, Aldrich the Wise is supposed to be looking into some information on infernalism and how to deal with this demon. And your own elder Madeline, Prince Ulrich of Timurin, from what I understand by Irene that Ulrich is adept in fighting or combating demons. So she was supposed to make her way to see him and see what she could learn about how to maybe assist in this situation.
And that is very true. I will, if needed, and if the sheriff says so, although he can take contact himself, and we did talk about him doing just that if the situation calls for it. The demon was not killed, but pacified the first time by Ulrich. He was able to do this with great damage to Omar's shop, of course, but it seemed to take time before it could remanifest itself within our world. But it will keep coming back unless we can break the bond that exists between him, or it, and Margot.
So Margot is the anchor here.
Yes.
Well, it would seem that we have several avenues laid out before us. I'll continue to have Aldrich look into the more esoteric lore, and perhaps if you have time, Madeline, perhaps you could put your resources towards this as well. But you and I should certainly look into this cult. It seems like at the very least, a mortal power base of this infernalist threat.
If I can be of assistance at a party or get together with them, I will assist you. Accompany you if needed.
I have some thoughts as to some possible connections between this cult and the nobility. In the meantime, I will need to see about other things that we discuss. Those who might be involved.
And perhaps a contingency plan for Margot.
Yes.
I do not know exactly what would happen, but since it is public knowledge, the reason that the demon appeared in Omar's shop was because I tried to stake her. I was not entirely successful. The demon took it as an attack upon itself when I called her out for being one, or consorting with one. And then, well, the revelry followed. If we were to pacify her, it might weaken it or limit its capability since it is tied to her. A thing to consider, at least.
If it's tied to her, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Obviously, we want to move with some manner of speed, but we don't need to be hasty.
Of course not.
I would rather not have to destroy her or anything of that manner. Obviously,
would not be what I would suggest. What I would suggest would be to, if needed, pacification, and then move her to Timuran. It is the best place for her. It is the place where the demon will have the least amount of power. It will be at the greatest peril. If she is moved there, it has to be close. It will have, well, Ulrich will be able to see it coming, and it will be exposed. Very much so. That would be my suggestion. If you will allow it, of course.
Again, I'm going to weigh my options.
Very well.
I'm afraid I do not have occult expertise. However, as in all endeavours of the city, I'm willing to lend a hand.
If there's one thing I've learned in all my research, Thorvald, is that everything bleeds. And I've seen you in action, so I'm pretty sure you can spread much blood. Especially this thing's blood, if needed.
That you can be sure of, Doctor.
Well, honestly, when it comes to things like this, you have more experience than most. You're a kindred, and you survived being near it for more than a couple of seconds. That is no small feat, Thorvald.
Thorvald does a waving of the hand gesture. I will withstand any challenge, as you know.
I know.
For the betterment of our survival and this being dealt with.
For the time being, for safety, I would recommend no one speak of this matter to Margot.
Of course not, my sheriff.
I will cease communications with her on this, though I have to tell you I did just come from seeing her. So,
If it is tied to her, we do not know how much it knows of the goings on around her, and I would rather it not be suspicious of imminent action against it. Cornered animals are the ones that fight hardest.
Thorvald looks slightly uncomfortable as he says he's not able to mask his discomfort. He says, "So you wish us to carry on as normal in our dealings with Margot?"
Until such a time as we have some sort of plan of action that is based on something beyond conjecture.
I've been spending time with her recently, but I will continue to do so that she suspects nothing.
Something concrete that we can deal with is this cult. That is certainly something that needs to be rooted out and dealt with, and is not dealing with entities that we do not understand. At least not directly, not yet. Hopefully. Well then, if there's nothing else.
No. Thank you very much for your time. Madeline stands up, curtsies to, and bids farewell to both the Merchant of Bones and the Sheriff.
have a good evening, both of you.
Oh,
Do
and
take care of.
one more thing. I do not believe that you will have to look too much into Irene. I have myself examined any connection between her and this, and there is none. And she is the child of Ulrich. He is more versed in spotting these types of people, or whatever connection they might have. And he trusts her.
I'll take that into consideration.
Thorvald says, "Yet love can be blind."
Love has very little to do with it. She smiles politely.
He smiles, and then he will bow deeply to the sheriff and bow to Merchant of Bones.
And the two of them will leave the office.
Well then, unless you need anything of me, Sheriff, I'll be taking my leave as well.
Of course.
And he just stands and gives him a small bow, and just quietly leaves.
And Gerard closes the door behind him.
And returns to his paperwork. And with that, the scene will come to a close. Thank you very much, players, for playing, and watchers for watching. Good night.